Christ. For all must carry their own loads. This is Galatians 6:2-5.
The two verses may seem contradictory at first, but the key to understanding them is knowing the difference between a burden and a load. The Greek word translated as burden means a hardship which is regarded as particularly burdensome or exhausting. It is what people carry when they are in crisis, an exceptional burden that threatens to overwhelm or crush them. On the other hand, the Greek word translated as load means a relatively heavy object which is carried, or cargo, as of a ship. This is what a person normally carries on an everyday basis. It may be heavy like the backpack of a student takes to class, but it wouldn't ordinarily overwhelm the person. In these two verses, Paul is calling us to help bear the extraordinary and potentially crushing burdens that come into each other's lives during a crisis, while each taking responsibility for their own ordinary loads. It's important for Stephen ministers to recognize the difference between excessive burdens and everyday loads. If expectations surrounding burdens and loads get mixed up, the boundary lines between a Stephen minister and care receiver can become blurred, resulting in a number of problems. Sometimes care receivers act as if their genuine crisis or just life as usual. They struggle under the terrible weight of their burdens, mistakenly thinking it would be irresponsible and a sign of weakness to expect or allow others to help them both bear the weight. Other times, care receivers are so overwhelmed that they expect, allow, or convince others to take responsibility not only for their burdens, but also for the load they should carry themselves. For example, they may expect others to make decisions for them or take care of tasks they could handle on their own. It's not always easy for care receivers to have a clear perspective on the difference between their burdens and their loads, or to maintain appropriate boundaries in the caring relationship. This makes it even more important for Stephen ministers to establish and maintain boundaries for themselves and to be diligent in respecting their care receivers' boundaries. Sometimes people build up the boundaries so much as to keep others out completely. Other times, people seem to have no boundaries at all, continually allowing their lives and problems and issues to become enmeshed with those of other people. God wants us to avoid both extremes, to take appropriate responsibility for ourselves while also giving and receiving care as necessary. But God doesn't stop there. Jesus also offers to share our burdens. He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus uses the image of a yoke, the crosspiece that links two oxen together and helps them share their work, to show how he wants to share in our burdens. He put on the yoke and find Jesus right there beside us, pulling alongside us. We have loads, and some days are heavier than others, but God graciously enables us to carry them. At times, however, everyone is weighed down with overwhelming burdens. During these times, Christ bears our burdens through the people of his church, and we see the face of Jesus in the person yoked with us. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, you share our burdens and lighten them when we feel crushed. You went to the cross to relieve us of the burden of our sin and death. You have promised that we will not only share your yoke, but also share your victory and enjoy eternity with you. Thank you for loving us so. Build us up with your love and make us strong and secure in you so that we can both carry our daily load and help others' burdens. Amen.
In your pre-class reading, you learned about two boundary issues to avoid in caring relationships. One is when the Stephen minister doesn't maintain their own personal boundaries, and the other is when the Stephen minister doesn't respect the care receiver's boundaries. You're also asked to assess yourself as to how well you generally do in maintaining your own boundaries and respecting other boundaries. In your manual, I want you to turn back to your pre-class reading to page 129. And if you look over on page 130, at the top of that page, there's focus note D, and that's the personal assessment scale 1, maintaining your own personal boundaries. Did you score yourself in that, on that scale? Okay. Now turn back to 129. Under not maintaining one's own boundaries, that first paragraph says, the first challenge is when people have trouble maintaining their own personal boundaries. They may not be sure who they are, what makes them unique, why they are worthy of respect, or how they stand in relationship to others. Or they may have an idea about those issues, but they're not sure how to assertively communicate their thoughts and feelings. Instead of just looking at that scale and picking out a number, I thought, let's look at that focus note C right beside there. I'm going to read down through that list, and if you have a pen or pencil with you, I want you to check the ones that apply to you, okay? So these are indications of not maintaining personal boundaries. People who are not attending to their boundaries might at times do these things. So have difficulty making decisions. Now, if you have difficulty making decisions, just put a little check mark beside that. Second one is have difficulty asking others for help. If that applies to you, make a little check mark there. Have difficulty saying no to people. Relying on other people for personal happiness. Frequently get hurt or manipulated or taken advantage of by others. Readily accept others' ideas and opinions rather than expressing your own. Spend so much time meeting others' needs that you often neglect your own needs. Feel responsible for other people's feelings. Tend to get caught up in other people's problems. Find it difficult to articulate your own faith apart from what others think. All right. Now, I would say the more of those things that you checked, the lower your score should be on that scale and focus note D on the next page.
Can you make a 0?
Nope, going as low as we go. So I just wanted you to, I mean, when they first said you're supposed to do that, I had a hard time just thinking about that by itself. But when I broke it down into those 10 things we just read, then it became pretty evident to me, and I'd have to score myself lower than I thought I would, because there's 4 or 5 of those things that are an issue with me. I mean,
We should have done that before we did the others.
well, and since we didn't, we just did, so we're okay. So now you kind of see where you rank in that list with the list compared to whatever your score was. All right. Now I want to do the same thing for not respecting others' boundaries. Right under that scale on 130, number 2. It says the second type of boundary challenge is when people don't respect others' boundaries. They may take responsibility for the other person rather than respecting their right to make personal decisions. They may make unrealistic demands or seek to impose their own thoughts, feelings, or beliefs on the other person. Okay? And then that scale that you were supposed to have already done is over on the next page, focus note D, where you gave yourself a score from 1 to 10. But I want us to look at that list of items and do the check mark thing again for this. So these are indications of not respecting other people's boundaries. People who do not respect other boundaries may at times make decisions for other people. You sometimes do that. Put a check mark. Jump in to do something for others before asking. Interrupt others before they can finish sentences or thoughts. Have difficulty allowing others to say no to them. Hurt, manipulate, or take advantage of other people, perhaps without being fully aware of it. Discount or minimize others' ideas and opinions, expecting others to adopt theirs instead. When I got down to these last few, I thought, well, they're going to quit thinking about them and they're going to start thinking about me. Feel their insight is superior to others and should be followed without questions. Expect others to feel the same way they do. Project their faults onto others. Yeah, if I had any, I'd probably do that too. Pressure others to believe the same way they do. Now, after having checked the things that apply to you, does it look like your score should be the same as whatever score you gave yourself? I realized after doing that my score on that one's even lower than it was on the one before. All right, but those are two of the main, I won't say concerns, but things we need to be aware of as we go into these relationships. I mean, you need to be sure of yourself, but not so much that you don't let the care receiver be sure of themselves as well. All right. I'm probably supposed to click this button 2 or 3 times, but let's see what happens when I do. Oh man, I've got to do it every time. All right. Now we're going to talk about Roman numeral 2, why boundaries can be blurred in caring relationships. The insights we learned about boundaries will apply in key ways to your caregiving. We'll now turn our attention to the boundaries appropriate for Stephen ministers and caregivers. So this other was just in general. Now we're going to look at the same thing, but in the specific arena of Stephen minister and care receiver. What a Stephen minister does. Look at focus note 2. A Stephen minister provides one-to-one lay Christian care. In one sentence. This is go back to your out of your reading and back to our outline for today. So we ought to be on page 142.
42?
Yep. That's Roman numeral 2. What boundaries can be blurred, ways they can be blurred. So in that focus note, what Stephen ministers do in a concise sentence, a Stephen minister provides one-to-one lay Christian care. That's it. Now, we're going to break that sentence down. One-to-one means each Stephen minister is matched with one care receiver of the same gender. The two meet in person typically once a week for about an hour in a setting they both agreed on. The caring relationship will be brought to close when the need for care has been addressed. Okay? That's the one-to-one. It's a lay ministry Stephen ministers are well-trained, supervised volunteers who provide a high level of care. They are not professional caregivers. Their role is different from that of counselor, therapist, pastor, or physician. It's Christian-based. Stephen ministers' care is an expression of Christ's love and an extension of the pastoral care we offer. When it comes to spiritual matters, Stephen ministers meet their care receiver where they are, helping them work through challenges without pressuring them or forcing their faith on them. And then care. Stephen ministers care by listening, supporting, praying, and helping their care receiver explore feelings without being judgmental, while offering emotional and spiritual support. Their role does not include providing other types of assistance such as shopping, transportation, child care, or other such types of help, although at times they may help care receivers identify ways to fill those needs. Okay, so that's what Stephen ministry is all about, and that's a pretty good statement of boundaries for the ministry. Before a Stephen minister is ever assigned, before you're ever assigned to a care receiver, that person first meets with a referrals coordinator, one of the Stephen leaders who is in charge of making the referral. I mean, we have somebody who needs a Stephen minister. Before that decision is made as to which Stephen minister is going to be with that person, the referrals person, Stephen leader, meets with them and goes over all this.
We have them for both separate from both men and women.
But so they have already, the first time you show up is not the first time they heard about all these boundary things. They've already done it. There's even a form that they sign that says they have, and that's what it's called an agreement to care or something like that. So they already know ahead of time, we're planning to meet an hour, once a week, wherever we just agree, and all those things we just read. All right. That way, before the care receiver first meets a Stephen minister, they will have an idea of the boundaries of Stephen ministry. However, because you have a much more complete understanding of Stephen ministry than your care receiver does, you'll want to take the lead in communicating the boundaries of Stephen ministry to your care receiver in a caring way and clarify them as often as necessary. If the Stephen minister is not intentional and assertive about establishing and maintaining boundaries, the caring relationship can easily get off track. One of the things I thought here, and I don't think we've ever talked about doing it this way, is to establish ahead of time. I mean, you go over these boundaries with your care receiver and then say ahead of time, look, every month or every 6 weeks or every 4 visits or whatever, we're going to go over these again just to make sure we stay inside the boundaries. So it's not a matter of something starting to creep in and you think, oh, do I need to go over this again? And you don't know when to do it, and pretty soon it's out of hand. You just schedule ahead of time. The first visit we have every month, first thing we're going to do is go over these boundaries, just so they stay out there. Think about boundaries this way. You're not establishing that because you're selfish and you don't want to give more time than an hour, or you don't want to go shopping for them, or you don't want to babysit. And that may be perfectly true, and if it is, that's fine, but that's not the reason to maintain the boundaries. If we don't maintain boundaries, eventually going shopping for them the second or third time is going to, but piss you off. I mean, you're going to think, crap, I got to do that again. And suddenly it taints the whole relationship to where you, instead of looking forward to being able to spend this hour working on just the spiritual care that you're giving, all these other things are in there. And so it affects the relationship. In order to keep that relationship pure, you got to keep the boundaries established so that feeling of man, I got to do that again, never gets in there. Because once that does, then the relationship is not what it needs to be, and not what it can be, and not what your care receiver needs it to be. So the boundaries are not, you're not imposing a selfish will when you do that. You're doing what's best for the relationship, and that's why they stress them so much while we're going through this.
And when, like you say, you get aggravated, do something several times, you're going to start getting resentful.
Yeah, and that affects the relationship, right? Resentful is a better word than whatever I said. I remember what I said. All right, focus note 3. I think the next page. Ways care receivers may overstep boundaries. Care receivers, the other guy, the person you're visiting. Care receiver wants a spouse or a friend to sit in on the caring relationship, on the caring visit. Care receiver pushes the Stephen minister to regularly meet on more than an hour or more frequently than once a week. Care receiver expects the Stephen minister to carry on extended conversations by phone or text in between visits. Notice that and there's several references in today's presentations that refer to upcoming sessions, and we'll talk more about that part in module 10. There's some other things we'll talk about in some of the other modules further down the road. The care receiver asked Stephen ministers to run errands, to help with housework, provide transportation, babysit, or perform other tasks outside of Stephen ministry. Care receiver wants the Stephen minister to help in an area where the Stephen minister has professional expertise, for instance, as an accountant, nurse, or mechanic. I mean, so you're an accountant and, tax season's coming up. Can you help me with my taxes? Well, that's outside of the scope of what we do. Care receiver wants Stephen minister to continue being the sole care provider when the really need for help of a mental health professional is what we need. We're going to talk about that in module 11, but sometimes the need is bigger than what we can provide, and we need to be able to recognize that, make that known to the Stephen minister supervision group, and let Stephen leaders help you find a referral process for that.
We've got a list of different categories of people.
Right.
The professional groups.
Care receiver asked the Stephen minister for financial assistance. I mean, so having those boundaries established and review them frequently will prevent a lot of these things from happening. But if it comes up anyhow, then it's easy to refer to. Last week we just went over these boundaries again. That's one of the things we can't do. I mean, just as assertively as you can. Care receiver wants to give money or large gifts to the Stephen minister. When that becomes an issue, you've already covered all that. The care receiver tries to make Stephen minister feel guilty for not doing something outside the boundaries. It's not that you don't need to feel guilty. You feel guilty if you do, because you're going to taint the relationship. You're going to create some resentment that doesn't allow you to minister the way you're supposed to. All right, do you have any other thoughts about care receiver might overstep or attempt to overstep Stephen minister's boundaries?
I do. On that first one there, the care receiver wants their spouse or friend to sit in on a caring visit. How do you handle that? Just tell me.
I mean, you say, last week we went over those boundaries, and Stephen ministry specifically says it's a one-on-one. Now, if you want your husband to sit in with us, maybe we should see if we can find him a Stephen minister. And I mean, we could even come at the same time. They can meet in the kitchen, we'll meet in the living room, and we've done that. We've done those kinds of things.
Very successful.
Any others? All right. Ways Stephen ministers may overstep boundaries. Now we're looking the other way, how you might overstep. In focus note 4, there's a list of those. Stephen minister overcommits their time to the caring relationship. For instance, meeting more than once a week, consistently meeting for much longer than an hour, or carrying on extended conversations by phone or text in between caregiving visits. Reviewing the process, reviewing the boundary statement with your care receiver, even on a monthly basis, is good for you too, because it is a reminder to you, I don't need to do this. Let's wait. If they call, you say, I understand, but let's just wait and we'll talk about that Tuesday when I come, so that those things don't get out of hand. Stephen Minister helps in ways that are outside the boundaries of Stephen Ministry, such as running errands, providing transportation, or offering physical or financial assistance. When those things come up, you have sometime in the last 3 or 4 weeks reread those boundary statements, and so it's easy just to refer back to it and say, well, that's not one of the things that we can do. The Stephen Minister is tempted to provide care or services that require professional help. We will talk about that enough as we go along, and as we, in supervision, review the relationship that you have with your care receiver, and you talk about that. If it's getting to that point, we'll know ahead of time, and it becomes everybody's responsibility to not let you do that. Stephen Minister over-identifies with the care receiver and becomes emotionally wrapped up in the care receiver situation. Over-identification. Remember the mud hole picture? I think Sandra's going to review that with you in just a few minutes. Stephen Minister, tries to minister to the care receiver's spouse and other members of the family. Same thing. One-on-one. If it needs to be 2, then it needs to be 2-on-2 in 2 separate settings. Stephen Minister tries to fix care receiver situation, give advice, or impose. These are things that after 20 sessions of talking about not doing them, you should be prepared to not do them. And when they come up, refer to the boundary statement.
It's very easy.
Yeah. But, and that's why I think, and I think they should put it in there, that you should just plan ahead of time that every 4th visit you go over those boundaries so that they don't ever get pushed in the back to where they're not front and center. Because the fence that you build around this relationship that keeps it what it's supposed to be is what makes it work. And when we don't keep those boundaries where they're supposed to be, the feeling of resentment creeps in there, and then it doesn't work. Stephen Minister feels guilty for not doing something for the care receiver, even though doing it would overstep the boundaries. If you keep the boundaries statement out there, then you shouldn't get that guilty feeling. Stephen Minister spends excessive time and energy making phone calls, conducting research, consulting professionals or agencies to remedy the care receiver situation. You're in the mud hole. The caring, you can make here's somebody you might want to call, or here's the list of folks you might want to, that could possibly help. The caring relationship continues long after the need for care. And that's a difficult one, but again, as the whole group looks at your caring relationship in supervision, as you answer the questions on the forms that you have. Every month when we meet, you have a check-in statement which briefly talks about your caring relationship, but then every once in a while you have an in-depth where you talk extensively about your relationship with your care receiver. And as we see that the issue that you're there for is resolved and gone, then it's time to, but once you establish that, and suddenly it becomes just a nice visit, and then it's not Stephen Ministry anymore. And you're welcome to go visit if you want to, but let's end it as an official process. That may be the one thing that we don't do as well as we should.
And it's hard when they really, especially if they need, it's a continuing thing that they're gonna need somebody to talk to. It's sometimes hard to do that.
Note that although one possible boundary issue is meeting more frequently than once a week with the care receiver, there are exceptions. And at times of major crisis, you may need to check on them. And I think we had a reference in last week or the week before about if your care receiver is in the hospital for whatever, you may want to go visit more than just once a week. And you don't want to go to the hospital and have a Stephen Minister visit for an hour. I mean, we're going to there's another session about that too, hospital visits need to be kept short, and instead of, so there are some exceptions to that, but, don't use the fact that there are exceptions to start going to visit them 4 times a week, just because they called and said, can you do it? I want to specifically mention one type of boundary issue that is often temptation for Stephen Ministries. It's the last item, focus note 4, and we already talked about that. That's the hardest part about knowing when and how to close the relationship. There, we have a session on that, or it is in one of our subsequent sessions about how you go about doing that. All right, diagnostic questions for Stephen Ministries and boundaries. Focus note 5. Before we move on, I want to share some self-diagnostic questions you can use to assess how you're doing in maintaining boundaries. They're found in focus note 5. And this is, in preparation for your visit, or just a weekly reminder to yourself. You ask yourself these things. Am I doing the tasks that are outside of what Stephen Ministry should be doing? Am I committing more time during or between my weekly caring visits than what is appropriate for Stephen Ministry? Am I trying to provide a type of level of care above what I should be providing? Is my care relationship moving toward a friendship rather than a relationship between the caregiver and care receiver? So if you keep those questions on your bathroom mirror, so you're looking at them regularly, that ought to help you stay inside the bounds of what we're doing. So it just says periodically ask yourself questions like these is a good way to spot any boundary problems. And if you see it is, or if you get in a situation that you think you may be having boundary issues, the next time we have supervision, that's where you can get some support and help in how to rein it back in if it's starting to get out of whack before it gets way out of whack. And I'm probably several clicks behind. So.
Well, I was supposed to be up there now. There we go. Okay, how maintaining boundaries relates to earlier modules. I think he went into that somewhat. In a moment, we'll practice identifying possible boundary issues. Before we do, however, I'd like to point out how maintaining boundaries ties in with caring principles we've discussed earlier in Stephen Minister training. We talked about the mud hole. I don't think we got a, yeah, we do. There is the slide. There it is. There it is. And this picture pops in my mind a lot of times when I'm trying to decide what I'm doing with something, not just Stephen Ministry, but that's a good reminder. In Module 2, you were introduced to the mud hole, which illustrates the difference between sympathy, over-identification, and empathy. You can see the diagram there, or it's on your Focus Note 6 on page 146. Over-identification is an example of blurred boundaries, where the Stephen Minister takes more ownership for the care receiver than is appropriate. You're down in the mud hole with them, and you can get pulled in there and sink if you aren't very aware of, letting it happen and noticing when it's starting to happen. Empathy, on the other hand, requires the Stephen minister to have well-defined boundaries and to emotionally identify with the care receiver without becoming overly involved. Well-defined boundaries allow Stephen ministers to enter the mud hole and help their care receivers out without getting stuck themselves. Servanthood versus servitude. On page 147 in Module 4, in Module 4 is on 147, we talk about servanthood versus servitude, which defines the difference between serving in freedom and serving out of obligation. Servanthood happens when a Stephen minister has well-defined boundaries and freely offers care and support in appropriate ways, while also feeling free to say no to any inappropriate request from the care receiver. Servitude occurs when a caregiver has blurred boundaries and feels pressured to provide more care than what is appropriate in Stephen ministry. Maintaining one's personal boundaries helps Stephen ministers avoid slipping over into servanthood instead of servitude. If you're in that mode of servitude, you resent what you're being asked to do, and your relationship is not going to be one where you can actually be of help to them as a caring servant there to provide care, not as servanthood, not servitude. We are the caregivers. God is the caregiver. Also in Module 4, you learn that Stephen ministers are caregivers and that God is the caregiver, which reminds us of differences between what we can do and what only God can do in a caring relationship. We all want to solve their problems for them, but that's not what we're there for. We're there to facilitate a conversation and help let them walk with God and find their solutions. When we have blurred boundaries, we take more responsibility than is appropriate for finding a cure or solution. When we have well-defined boundaries, we realize that the cure or solution is in God's hands. So we focus instead on providing emotional and spiritual support to the care receiver. Having well-defined boundaries lets us recognize that there's no need for us to be the caregiver, because God is. Focus on the process of caring. In Module 5, you learned about the importance of focusing on the process of caring while trusting God for the results. When we begin focusing on getting results rather than working the process, we blur the boundaries of the caring relationship. Maintaining well-defined boundaries includes focusing only on what we can do in the caring relationship and leaving to God what only God can do. I think we all tend to at times feel like we should be women tend to be fixers especially. We want to take care of everybody's problems. And we tend to slip into that mode if we're not really careful and think we can take care of it instead of trusting God to be in charge and let us just be there to love them and listen and help them to work through their own problems. Assertiveness also plays into this. In Module 6, you learn that the importance of assertive communication, speaking the truth in love. Assertiveness is essential for having well-defined boundaries, while passivity and aggression pave the way for boundary problems. Passivity, I can't say that, can result in a Stephen minister giving in to excessive demands from the care receiver. Aggression can cause the Stephen minister to impose on the care receiver's boundaries and force particular wishes or solutions onto him or her. If you remember the little skit we did where you witness the person telling them exactly what to do, not letting them get a word in edgewise. This is what you need to do, and this is what you're going to do. That's aggression. In contrast, assertiveness helps protect the Stephen minister's own boundaries while also respecting the care receiver's boundaries. Stephen ministers who regularly communicate passively or aggressively are likely to encounter frequent boundary issues. Assertive communication is required to establish and maintain well-defined boundaries. you can see how boundaries connect to many other important aspects of Stephen ministry. In order to minister most effectively, you'll want to pay close attention to how effectively you're handling boundaries, both yours own and your care receivers. And I think Doyle is going to talk more about boundaries.
You even flipped it forward.
I did.
Right.
Wow, one step ahead of.
What boundaries are needed here? This is a really good session. You get some examples of what, and these things can happen. No, that's not correct. These things will happen. Yeah, they certainly have happened in this group. Assessing care and relationships. Let's look at two caregiving situations having some boundary issues. On Focus Group 7 on page 148 contains a description of a hypothetical caring relationship. Need a volunteer to read those, to read that. Did you volunteer, Hazel? Do it.
Read. Can you read the whole thing?
Yeah, it's a lot of reading.
The whole thing under Focus Note 7.
Read all of Focus Note 7. You can talk Francis into reading part of it if you want to.
You tell me what to do.
You go, read it.
No.
That's aggressive.
Well, I've studied assertiveness. I've learned assertiveness from Bob.
Aaron was in his mid-40s when his father unexpectedly passed away. The two had been very close, and the loss was a big shock for Aaron. Mark, who was in his 50s, became Aaron's Stephen minister during his grief. Third time they met, Aaron said he needed to do some repair work on the garage and asked Mark whether he'd mind having their visit in the backyard. Mark agreed and even pitched in with the repairs as they talked. The next two times, Aaron continued working on the garage and Mark offered a hand. Mark realized their visits were starting to get off track. So he suggested to Aaron that the next time they met at a coffee shop so they could focus just on talking. Aaron agreed and the visit went very well. The next time they met, however, Aaron said he needed to put up some shelves in the basement and asked Mark to help him. Although Mark felt a little frustrated, he figured it would be a short project and agreed to help. That weekend, Mark got a call from Aaron, who said he was having some trouble with his van. He said it would be a big help to have Mark take a look at it. Mark had a very busy week and wanted to enjoy his time off, but he didn't want to disappoint Aaron, so he suggested a good shop that could work on the van. Aaron dismissed the idea, saying that it would only take a couple of hours and that he and his father always used to help those. He and his father always used to handle those times together, or issues together. Although Mark had some misgivings, he felt bad about saying no. So he gave in and drove over to Aaron's house to help.
Okay, all right. In your group, I need a group of 3.
Well, that's going to be hard.
Look on page 189, Focus Note 8, those 3 questions. Discuss those 3 questions. Give about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Well, the first one too is
Who in the caring relationship is struggling with boundaries?
Mark's struggling. I mean, they're both struggling
I'm
with boundaries.
saying they're both.
Mark is the one that should be a little bit more
assertive.
concerned about it in my,
Yeah. I agree. Go and look at the next one.
how would you describe the boundary issues?
But Aaron's asking too many.
Yeah.
He's asking too much of Mark outside of the
Relationship.
relationship. He's asking too much.
And Mark is not looking at it as having boundaries. Or he doesn't have any boundaries. Mark's trying to help.
You're right. Mark's trying to help, right? Mark's being a good Christian.
Yeah, but
He's not being a very good Stephen minister.
right.
And that's a big problem.
But remember, a while ago, we said that in that relationship, it's the student minister who has been trained and should understand boundaries and how they'll affect it. So on that very first time, when Mark said, I gotta fix this thing in the garage, can we just be out there, work on it while we talk?
You mean Aaron said.
Aaron said, whichever one. And Mark said, okay.
Yeah.
That seemed okay. If he says okay there, then he needs to review the boundaries thing before they leave, so that we know that this is, because to Aaron, it just seems like this is a way to get even closer. We're doing something together, but closeness is not necessarily what we're trying to achieve in a student minister relationship. It's
In our group that we have now, I think we have benefited after the fact in a very, very bad boundary relationship right after we started. There was a situation that every boundary you can imagine was destroyed. And I think we've remembered that, and we're very careful about boundaries. I've had people ask me, could I help do something? And I said, well, yeah, as your friend and as a church member, I can do that. Let's do it. But this is not a Stephen ministry thing. Stephen ministry is totally separate from that. And but looking back at that very bad situation we had in this group, I think we're all exceedingly careful about boundaries after that. All right, now let's look at a second situation. And somebody else give Hazel a break and read focus group 9 on 49 and 50.
Since graduating from college, Katie had been employed at a large company for several years, and she greatly enjoyed her work there. Then, during a round of downsizing, Katie was laid off. She quickly became stressed about her family's finances and wasn't sure how to go about looking for a new job. Melissa became Katie's Stephen minister shortly afterward. Melissa came into the caring relationship ready to do whatever she needed to help Katie navigate the challenges of unemployment and find a new job. They spent the first couple of meetings talking about Katie's feelings about the situation. But after a while, Melissa began to ask fewer questions about feelings and more about job prospects. During the caring visit, about 2 months into the caring relationship, Katie was sharing how she felt down because she hadn't been able to get an interview for a promising position. Right in the middle of Katie's sharing, Melissa jumped in and asked, "What's your resume look like?" Katie was surprised and a bit hurt about being interrupted, but she went and got a copy of her resume. After looking at it for a minute, Melissa started making notes all over it and pointing out where Katie could improve it. They spent the rest of the visit talking about the resume. Then, when Melissa was getting ready to leave, she offered to take Katie's resume home with her and find ways to improve it. Katie wasn't sure that she should let Melissa do that, but she felt like she had hit a wall, so she reluctantly agreed.
What's the big problem here?
That one, the care receiver,
Yeah,
is the one that noticed boundaries were being.
that's right. She remembered it.
He did. Melissa kind of messed that one up.
Now, during this situation, what could Melissa do to fix the problem?
Stay out of it.
Very good.
Boy, that's blunt.
I mean, seriously,
Good
because
sheriff.
Get out of my business, woman.
that's not something she should be doing. That's Katie's job to fix her, do a resume or what the job, not Melissa.
Well, I have a tendency, that's what I have to watch out myself as a Stephen ministry, trying to fix a problem. Because I'm used to doing that with my kids. If kids call me, and I try to fix a problem.
And we probably really shouldn't even do that.
Yeah,
But I think that might be crossing.
Well, as a matter of fact, a close friend of mine at Collierville asked me one day, with church together, and he said, "Doyle, do your kids call you when they have a problem?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do." And he said, "That's a shame, isn't it?" I said, "Well, I never thought of it that way." He says, "You're not who they ought to be called. They ought to call on the Lord." And we talked a lot about that, and it beat it into my head. Yeah, that's not my job. My job is to make sure they know who to talk to.
But I see this as more subtle than that, in that the problem is not the resume. The problem is she doesn't have a job. She's trying to find one. And so we're not really solving her problem. You know, we didn't just step up and say, well, come work for me and solve the problem. But the resume, I mean, helping her with the resume is not solving the problem. It's working toward it. But that's still, that's not what we do. I mean, it is a boundary issue, but we need, and did I read this? Maybe it was in the service book somewhere about identifying the problem and knowing what the issue is so that you know what you're trying to address. But it's, I mean, hardly any of these things become an issue just wham, all of a sudden. It's a gradual, I mean, looking at the resume doesn't seem to be all that much of an issue.
And Kathy didn't even ask her what help.
That's right.
No,
Well, she felt a bit uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, that's what Robert said.
I mean, even if she
She's better at it.
Even if she had asked, would you look at my resume and see if you can help me with it? You still wouldn't do that. I mean, you still would say, well, let's see if we can't find you some resources to help you do a better resume. Because that, even though you're just helping with a little part of the problem, you're still jumping in to try to fix it for her. And let her.
Melissa misidentified the problem here. The problem is that, and it states it very clearly, Katie was sharing how she felt down.
Yeah.
That was the problem, not the resume.
Yeah.
Melissa wanted to fix the resume, but the problem, identifying the problem is that Katie feels down because she hasn't found a job.
She started talking about her.
That's right.
Exactly.
They're there for.
Melissa cut her off.
Yeah, but if she had just kept pursuing her feelings, whichever one it is, the care receiver might have realized that, well, I need to upgrade my resume so that I feel better about myself, and if prospective employers do too. So,
She might have got through discussions. She
Yeah.
got to that point.
right, on her own.
The next thing is where you can get help on problems like this is your supervisor meeting. We've hit on this several times in these presentations. We meet once a month, the Stephen ministers, and we discuss problems that you're having, or I guess successes too. But we don't mention names. We don't let it be known who we're talking about. We need to talk about what we're talking about the problem. Yeah.
Is the whole group of Stephen ministers meet or just the supervisory group?
No, if we were a bigger thing back when we had 23 people in this, we broke up into different groups. But one person was the supervisor in that group, and we talked. But now we're smaller sizes, so the whole group meets. So the answer is yes. This or this, the answer is yes.
I was wondering.
It's whatever works.
When there were more of us, we had supervision. We all met together to talk about ministry things and that sort of thing. And then we divided into the small supervision groups where 3 or 4 people and a facilitator met together. And that's where you talk about how your care relationship is going and that sort of thing. And then outside that, we had Stephen leader meetings where it was just the Stephen leaders to work on things like recruiting the next class. Now we pretty much meet once a month and everybody talks about it. I mean, we do the supervision part as a group. There's 6, 7 of us usually. And then, but then if there's Stephen leader things going on, we talk about those too.
If we become Stephen ministers, will we meet with y'all
Once a month.
Once a month. Okay.
And if you read in some material that you meet every 2 weeks, that's what they recommend. And we determined that once a month is.
We've changed some things that we think for the better, but one thing has been our group has been successful, and we've survived. And Stephen ministers groups have a tendency to go out of business pretty.
But also, one of the ways we've done that, we've done a lot of things that really is not technically student ministry. We didn't really call it student ministry. But we used it as an outlet for us to be able to serve the church community and be doing something when we didn't have a big enough group of care receivers and, to keep everybody busy. So we've done things like hospital visitations and
Nursing home.
nursing home visits. Instead, when we might have do a care visit, if we had enough care receivers for everybody to be busy. But we've determined that as long as we're serving and not calling it Stephen ministry, but it keeps us going. It keeps the group going.
We've also worked with each other, like 2 couples administer to each other. And the biggest problems Stephen ministry across the country has is getting enough care receivers.
Do we have people on the waiting list?
No. Wait.
No, and that's a thing. For Stephen ministry is not a permanent kind of thing. It's when you have a difficult situation, somebody comes to walk with you through that. So a waiting list really won't. I mean, when somebody needs a Stephen minister, we have to be able to do that
Now,
almost immediately. And so it's really that the give and take of that, having too many requests having too many receivers and not enough ministers could be a problem, I guess. It has not been for us. But the other problem is having Stephen ministers who don't have care receivers, who are just waiting, but need to be available, at a moment's notice almost.
That's, in the early days, we assigned people to people who were in nursing homes, for instance. And that worked great, too.
How do people know that there are Stephen ministers? I mean, if you're a person at home and you're depressed and all this, how do you know that there are people here that can help?
Because Robert tells them, but that's the way it happens mostly.
most of the time, I know what's going on in someone's life.
Right, I realize that.
Yeah.
We all know that, but there are people out there that we don't know.
We have not advertised a lot in the community because we don't have that many caregivers right now. And our concern is that if we start advertising, and we'd love to, if we start letting other people know that we then would not have caregivers to assign to.
We have,
In my mind, I wouldn't have.
we have some situations that,
But we did. We did. I mean, we advertised in the Shopper's Guide.
yeah.
With you.
But I
And,
mean, I just.
and we did-
You didn't even charge us.
People out there that-
and we had,
But,
we
don't-
probably-
I know even, but I just know there are people out there.
Don't they have to request or ask for a Stephen Minister?
Well, they gotta know about it first. Preacher will talk to them about it, and then, the Stephen leader that's a male will go see the males, and which is me, and the ones that, goes and sees the women is Sandra.
I misunderstood. I thought they had to request a Stephen Minister.
Matter of fact,
I did
It
too.
tells them about Stephen Minister.
I tell them about Stephen Ministry, and then they tell me whether or not they are willing to consider it. If they say, yes, that sounds like a good idea, then if it's a man or a woman, depending on who I go to the Stevens leader and say, I've got someone who needs a Stevens minister, is open to a Stevens minister, then they assign a caregiver to that person.
After they go talk.
Right, after they interview them, then they assign a Stevens minister.
But just knowing our congregation real well, one of us will see somebody we think probably needs a Stephen Minister. We'll sit down and talk to Robert about it, and then he will approach them.
I know people, I've
Yeah.
known them for years.
Yeah.
That, I mean, they're my freezer, I talk to them or whatever, but I didn't realize I could say to y'all,
Yes.
or I can say to my friends, well, I have such and such.
Yes.
I know, or.
That's one thing we'll talk about those monthly meetings. That somebody got somebody they need to talk to, but I'll go to Robert.
If you come to me and you say, I've got a person that I think needs a Stevens minister, and you tell me who it is, I'm gonna ask you, can I please have the phone number?
He'll take it from there.
Yeah,
Years ago.
I would then call them.
Yeah. Well, he totally didn't get.
I believe back in the early starting, we were told that you have to ask.
Well, and since I've been in it, we've had Sundays where we got up and talked to people about the fact that we're here. And it doesn't have to be like a death or if you've gone through a divorce or if a mother has a new baby and she's over taking care of a baby. There's a lot of situations that we can help in. And we've talked to people in front of the congregation or put things in the backs of the bulletin of the pews that they can read to try to make people aware, but it hasn't got us very far.
But, we haven't talked much about if to the congregation, if you know someone out,
I don't think so.
in your neighborhood or in your family or outside of our congregation who could benefit from this ministry, you can talk to them. Now, early this happened, we had a member of our congregation who thought her niece needed a Stephen minister. But she never talked to her niece. She wanted us to. We talked to her niece on multiple occasions, and her niece didn't want a Stephen minister, didn't want to have anything to do with it. And so we overplayed the confidentiality thing and not going back to the first person and saying she didn't. I mean, we have, and so the church member thought we never did anything because she never got a Stephen minister. But we had done what we were supposed to do, and she didn't want, and she wouldn't agree to sign the agreement thing, and so we didn't do it. But we should have gone back to the member and said, "Look, your niece does not want a Stephen minister unless she's willing to accept one. We can't
make her. We had a.
And had she been assigned a Stephen minister, the aunt would not have been told that. There comes a point where you have to trust me as the pastor that if you tell me someone needs a Stephen minister, that I've acted on that request.
That's right. And he's not going to tell anybody.
No.
He's not going to follow up and say, well, you got him. But hey, earlier we
Because
talked
I
about.
can't tell anybody. I can't come back and say, yes, Francis, we gave them. I can't do that.
That's what we coming in yesterday. I'm not telling you who all had breast cancer.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sandra talked,
Exactly.
Sandra
Same
talked,
thing.
I just never knew I could.
Sandra talked
Yes.
earlier about when you bring the Stephen ministry relationship to an end. I've never had that problem. Mine have all died.
Which means you probably went too long.
And which probably means
Going too long.
Don't come to my house.
Here you go, Doyle. All right, let's put what we've been talking about. And we've talked some about putting this actually in practice and how this works out in real life. But let's, if you would, turn to your page that has the compass on it. I'm sorry, I don't see the page number.
1 through 2, if you talk about the office.
What page?
52.
152, okay.
That's the next page. I just want to get to it.
All right, so
Why is it turn the page?
look at your compass again. Thinking about what we have talked about for the last hour and 5 minutes. What are ways, when you're talking about boundaries, that compassionate and boundaries work together? How does being compassionate and having boundaries work together? Believe it or not, folks, having boundaries is a compassionate thing. You can't be a good caregiver. You cannot be a compassionate caregiver if you don't have boundaries that keeps you out of the mud with them.
exactly.
Because when you get in the mud, you're no good. You're no help to them. Now you're wallowing in the same self-pity they're wallowing in. And there's nothing compassionate. Compassion sometimes means looking at someone and saying, you know, you need to quit having a pity party. Sometimes that's very compassionate, is to call their hand. And as a care receiver, as a caregiver, to a care receiver, being compassionate is helping them out of that mud hole, whatever that may look like. What about full of faith? How does setting boundaries relate to being full of faith? Nobody? How does setting boundaries help be full of faith? Jesus set boundaries, did he not? When Peter told him that you can't die. Now, Jesus was aggressive about it. He said when he threw the money changers out of the temple, he was being full of faith. Setting boundaries is also faithful.
Yeah, on two different occasions, I think it said, my time is not come yet.
Exactly, twice he has said, and that goes back to being full of faith. Trusting each other that if Francis comes to me and says, Robert, I think so and so could use a Stevens minister, trusting us enough that you know we followed up on it, even though you may not hear another word. Now your friend or your person may say, thank you so much for telling me I have a Stevens kid. They can tell you, we can't. You can't. Folks, it takes a great skill. Talking about being skilled, setting boundaries is a skill. It's not something that comes naturally. It's something you have to be taught, as we've done in this chapter. We'll do in other chapters. It's something that you have to be taught. Setting boundaries is not an easy thing to do sometimes. Doyle may use the example that somebody asked him to help them with something, and his answer was, as your Stephen minister, I can't do that. As a church member and a friend, I'll help you do that, but it's not part of our covenant or part of our time together. It's separate from that, because they need to know that helping to fix the car is not what a Stevens minister does, even if the Stevens minister is a great mechanic. The last point on the compass is trustworthy. How does setting boundaries and trustworthy work with one another? Nobody?
Well, I think that a care receiver should be able to trust his Stephen minister to stay within those boundaries.
Exactly. You're exactly right.
And the onus is on us.
Thank you, because I was about to say, you're right, it's on us. It is not your care receiver's responsibility to keep you within boundaries. That's your job. And they should be able to trust you that if they cross the boundaries, you're going to say, wait a minute, that's not part of who I am and what I do. Let's look ahead for just a moment. Boundaries are a way to protect the self, both your own self and other selves. When boundaries are established and maintained, people are better equipped to prevent others from taking advantage of or hurting them. By respecting your care receiver's boundaries and maintaining your own, you help create a place where your care receivers feel safe to recognize, accept, and express their painful feelings. One of the best ways to ensure that you're respecting the boundaries of a caring relationship is through the supervision group, which we'll talk more about at a later module. Let's bow our heads together. Heavenly Father, you have made us safe. You gave us our daily bread. You are with us even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You died and rose for us so that we need no longer fear. Help us to trust in you, to feel safe in your presence, and to lead our care receivers into the safety of your loving arms. Give our care receivers and each of us the faith in you to live, serve, and love as you want us to. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. Let's take about a 15-minute break, and then we will begin module number 8. All right, module number 8, page 153.
To get my book to the right page too.
My baby, this I'm not reading. Yeah.
Well,
I think the next time
there we go.
that's what I read.
The Apostle Paul experienced a significant number of difficult events in his life. Matter of fact, in one of the letters, he described how his ministry had exposed him to trouble, hardship, distresses, beatings, imprisonments, riots, hard work, sleepless nights, and hunger. Paul said he'd been given 39 lashes 5 times, beaten with rods 3 times, stoned once, shipwrecked 3 times, adrift in the open sea for a night and day, and otherwise in danger again and again. Wouldn't you love to have Paul's life? All the while, feeling the daily pressure of his personal calling. It can be easy to think of Paul as a spiritual superhero, someone so connected to Christ that he could move through any and all of life's difficulties with confidence and resolve. But Scripture makes it clear that wasn't the case. Paul wrote that at times he felt like a fragile clay jar, hard-pressed, perplexed, persecuted, struck down, like he was carrying the death of Jesus himself in his body. From that description alone, Paul certainly sounds like someone who experienced genuine crisis. For much of his life, Paul had been a strong, proud, capable, and self-reliant individual. At one point, though, Paul said that he and his companions had been so utterly, unbearably crushed that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death. Because of this experience and others like it, Paul realized he needed to find a new way of thinking about strength, weakness, and suffering in order to get through his personal crisis. Paul learned that openly and honestly sharing about his weaknesses would actually make way for Christ's power to sustain him, and he writes, "But the Lord said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness." That realization didn't mean that Paul's suffering immediately went away, but he had found a new way to deal with it, opening up about what he was struggling with. That's one of the key ways that Stephen's ministers help people in crisis. They give people a safe, confidential setting to let out what's possibly going on inside of them. And in that process, hope and healing become possible. Paul was a unique individual with his own background and experiences, so it wouldn't do any good to assume we should be just like Paul when we're suffering. But we can certainly implement the strategy that Paul learned to deal with crisis. Rather than pressuring ourselves to be strong or remain calm in the face of overwhelming stress and anxiety, we can learn to be honest, open, vulnerable about our struggles, trusting that God will demonstrate his power through our weakness. That's one of the first steps on the path toward greater wholeness. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, at times each of us face situations that overwhelm us and challenge our ability to carry on. When that happens, we pray that you would show your strength in our weakness as we seek to be open and honest about our own struggles. In the same way, help us to provide a safe place for people to share their pain and suffering as you provide the strength they need to move through the crisis they face. Thank you, Lord, for being our strong support in times of weakness. Amen. And my next door, you up? All right.
Actually, I've got number one. It's very short. We might keep it shorter. We'll see. In your homework assignment, you were supposed to do this crisis self-inventory on page 165. Did any of you complete the questions? It's on 165 in your guide in your.
160.
Did any of you do that? Well, what we were going to do is, if you don't mind sharing, and only share anything that you're comfortable. It says to divide in pairs and discuss it with each other, but we don't have enough pairs, and we don't have really enough time to go too far into discussing this. But if you did it and you can share just a couple of minutes and just share what you're comfortable with about what you went through and how you felt about it and how you dealt with the process. Did anybody? Well, all right.
I'm comfortable with sharing a life crisis.
I'm sure we've all been through plenty of them, but sometimes it's hard to want to share it. So, okay, I guess we can.
I don't mind sharing, but I'm having trouble picking out a real crisis.
That's me. I'm not.
Well, what do you consider a crisis?
It's not my place to say, but.
Go ahead. You can tell anything about me. I don't care.
I would have thought cancer would have been a life crisis.
No, and Francis, she probably didn't consider it that. Francis just takes everything and goes with it.
I don't.
I could be wrong. I'm just.
No, I don't remember it as being a crisis.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was going to say that to him, but I couldn't figure
And
out.
I have done a lot of things in my life, and I've taken care of people and done this and this, but I just don't remember. I remember things happening. I guess I remember the first thing would be my dad was in his 50s when I was born, but he lived into his 90s and was still fairly well. So he was the first person that I saw, just have a heart attack, whatever, some kind of stroke, ended up in hospital and passed away. But I just think we always had a crisis was not a part of our life.
How are y'all defining crisis?
Yeah,
That's what I think, yeah. How are you defining crisis?
Crisis is if I couldn't sit here and share with people what was going on and feel like Jesus was here with me and all.
A crisis, though, can also be something that just turns your life kind of upside down for a little while.
Changes your life.
Taking care of a parent. That changes life. That changes life. That changes how you see and how you focus on life because it changes what you do in your life. A crisis isn't something where you fell apart. It's something that altered your life,
Okay, I can tell you my first crisis.
okay?
I just never, that word just not come into my life.
Right.
Okay, this was my first crisis. Yeah, that okay. Now, what happened with my mom and daddy and various other people that took it, I probably wouldn't call it that. I was working at the Golden Times. I was probably 29 years old. I was home. I was sitting home in Crane Hill, sitting on the porch on Friday because we didn't work on Friday. Got a call from some kind of travel people in Missouri. I don't know if you knew my Opal Cooper talked. Some of y'all did. I don't know. Some people here have talked about. Was a teacher. She was a retired teacher. Got a call from a bus company in Missouri that she had a fall on the steps of the Capitol. And, the bus tour is going on off. She's going to the hospital. That was a crisis. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, that's a crisis.
Yeah, but I mean, so it became my job. Yeah, it became my job to go to it was not Joplin, whatever it is in Missouri.
Mom's got to deal with one next week. You drew the short straws
Jefferson
to be the first caregiver. That upends your life for a few weeks.
I've been up those steps.
That's, but that's a crisis. The fact that your life is going to be upended for a couple of weeks. Not that you was resent doing it, but it's going to be upended to take care of your sister.
Yeah.
A crisis is not always something bad, folks.
So I have a sister who was, I guess, already living in Virginia.
Yeah, she must be. That's been 5 years.
And she flew to Memphis, met her in Memphis, drove on up there to Jefferson City. And
Continue to closer to Memphis, so Kansas City and St. Louis are both closer.
No. I mean, if you're going from here.
Okay, don't let her get on with it.
Yeah, you want to hear my story on that? And so, she was like 85 or something, and she had fallen down about 10 steps or something. Didn't break anything, but anyway, so life was never the same. I mean, she a week later she came home. Was home 2 or 3 days, and it was obvious she couldn't stay there, and so she was in the nursing home from then on for about 3 years.
A crisis is not always something bad. A crisis is simply something that upends your life for days, weeks, months, years. Getting married is a crisis. It is.
Staying married is a bigger one.
You're exactly right. Getting married totally upends your life. And it totally changes your life.
I used that word before.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a change. Yeah. My life changed right then. Because I was the person. On the other hand, she had been a person that had made all the decisions. She had done everything she needed to be. Every time she went on trips, she took me in her house and showed me where everything was and what was at the bank and what was here and what was there. And
how many people would consider having a baby a crisis?
Mm-hmm.
But it is.
That was the point I was about to make. As Stephen ministers, we're supposed to be there when people experience a crisis.
Right.
Or, as they say in some of the literature, when you get that call, that's the worst call you've ever had, or the call that changes your life for whatever period of time, that we step in to help you get through that. But a crisis can be a good situation, but sometimes it has results that are difficult for you. So when you think about helping someone handle a crisis, it's not necessarily something horrendous that's life-threatening, life-ending, that sort of thing. It can be something good that happened, but they're still having trouble dealing with it.
Exactly.
So that being said, I think we probably can move on and let Doyle do his thing, and we'll get on through these sessions. This was the main thing, was that realizing what the process is to one person is not necessarily what a process is to somebody else.
Exactly. As pastors, we are taught, it is built into our head that any change in a person's life is a crisis that has to be addressed and worked good or bad.
I guess I know things that have happened, crisis is not a word I have used,
I know.
just, never.
Now that I've heard that story and what you said, I've had several crises, many. But as I look back, I don't consider them a crisis because God always made something good happen out of that crisis.
A crisis can be something good.
Always.
It can be something good.
And he was always there.
Exactly.
I mean, I know not everybody has that.
There you go. Remember, we're talking about you being a good caregiver. You may be dealing with a care receiver who does not see the Lord's hand in the crisis.
And who might define crisis different than you do. Looking on page 168, focus note 1. And we go into the lessons, goes through about 6 pages of detailed notes, but that diagram to me just shows exactly. We're just going to go through that diagram and take a little faster approach. Life's going on as normal.
Well, put your diagram up there so they can see it.
It's Friday and sunshine.
That's a good plan. Oh,
There you go.
Life's going on as planned.
It's Friday and the sunshine. I just told y'all.
Friday, and it's getting that phone call, or it's anything. Anything can happen and change your life. You can either keep thinking the way you've always thought, or you can adjust your thinking. And that's pretty much what that things in the next 6 pages says. So I'm going to just fast forward a little bit. Seven ways to care for people during a crisis. Crucial factor in determining which path a person takes, the one toward greater brokenness or wholeness, or having trustworthy, caring people to listen and offer support. That's a key part of what you'll do for your care receiver as a Stephen minister. There are 7 specific ways you can care for a person in crisis. Begin providing care as soon as possible. That's going through the motions to get signed up as a caregiver, the person getting a reading a change, sign the papers, and get as soon as possible start the process of changing your way of doing things. Take the crisis seriously. Even the good things, the marriage, getting married. I've done it twice, and it's a big deal, and you take it seriously, and I think most people do. All right, be calm, consistent, and dependable. Dependable. Calm. Think logically through the process. Consistent. Just be consistent. Do what you need to do, and be dependable. That people can depend that you're going to do what you said. Help the care receiver stay in the crucible. I don't know why in the world they use that word. It's the area. Put a circle around the problem, or the crisis, whether it's good or bad, and help the people. You got a care receiver that something's happened to them. Keep within that definition. People that have the tendency to run off all different directions. Try to minimize that. Provide essential report. Meet with them. Meet with them weekly. That's a big reason that we're meeting weekly, is so that it is essential that we're meeting, we're doing something important. That's why we don't want to get sidetracked with these boundaries. remain focused on the process. Stephen Ministry is the process, including supervision is part of the process too. When the care receiver is not even there, and if you have a problem, that's one thing I don't know that we've mentioned or not. If you've got a problem that needs to be addressed before the supervision meeting, call a Stephen leader. There's all four of us are Stephen leaders. And by the way, that's one thing we have that's important in a church. At a large church, try to do this without the pastor being a Stephen leader. It doesn't work real well. And I think that's probably a big reason that Stephen ministries have failed in a lot of churches. Pray with care receiver as appropriate. Now you can get a care receiver that's not a Christian. That church, even if they are Christian, that church is not a part of their normal life. Normal prayer is not a part of their normal life. But as appropriate, pray with people, pray for people anyway, regardless of what you do with them. And who has number 3?
All right, I think that's me, isn't it? Oh, is that you? Okay. I don't have my list in front of me.
All right, we're going to look at a situation leading to a state of crisis and then talk about the care receiver's needs and how you might be able to care. The script for this scene is focus note 2 on page 171 and 172. And yes, it's rather long, but I want just respecting your voice, Sherry, Hazel to be the Stephen minister and Francis to be Evan, if you will, in that. We're going to read through it and then answer some questions about it. First, I'll read the situation. The Stephen minister is caring for Evan, who was recently fired from his job. Evan has taken the dismissal hard. It has significantly affected his feelings of self-worth. He's worried about his family's financial situation. Evan is married, has 2 young children. He knows that his family won't be able to get by only on his wife's salary for very long. Now, Hazel, start and keep going.
Hey, Eddie, good to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's nice to talk with the one person I haven't let down yet. Well, at least as far as I know.
You haven't let me down at all. But tell me more about this feeling that you've let people down.
I mean, what's there to say? I failed Jenna and the kids for starters. We really need both Jenna's and my paychecks to make ends meet, so money's already getting tight. On top of that, Jenna was hoping to go part-time to spend more time with kids, and we were really counting on my career to keep us going long-term. But now the pressure's all on her. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I totally screwed up.
It can really hurt to feel that way.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever felt this worthless. Do you know what it's like to have to tell your family and friends you got fired? It was a good job, too. I liked what I did, and I could have done well and moved up. But I just didn't stay on top of things and lost one of the biggest accounts. After that, I'd probably fire me, too. It's my own fault, and the more I think about it, the worse I feel.
I hear how tough this is for you. You lost a good opportunity and feel responsible. How do you see yourself moving ahead from here?
I haven't even been able to think about that. Why would any other company want me now? I wouldn't want me. And if someone did hire me, I'm sure I'd mess that up too.
That's a lot of negative feelings you're holding on to.
Well, sure. Why wouldn't I? I had a good job, but they couldn't keep it. And now I can't even support my own family.
It sounds like this whole thing has completely knocked you off your game.
I mean, yeah. And it's also that I know I made mistakes, but deep down, I don't really think I'm totally useless. I was doing a good job before I started slacking, so I know what I'm capable of. It's just, I just keep kicking myself over what I threw away and what I should have done differently. If only I hadn't messed things up.
You really seem down on yourself, but you also mentioned that you know what you're capable of. What are some things you might do to turn things around?
I don't know. I feel pretty lame just moping around like this. Other guys I know who lost their jobs were out applying at new places the next day. And here I am just throwing a pity party for myself. Why can't I just bounce back like they did?
Well, you might just need that first step to get you going. It sounds like you want to change things. What do you think might be a good first step?
I wish I knew. I guess I should probably update my resume, huh?
Sounds like a good start. In fact, that might even help you start feeling better about things. And if you're still stuck after that, another possibility might be to consider seeing a career counselor.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not real big on counselors. They're not like you. You're easy to talk to.
Well, I'm going to keep on meeting with you, but a career counselor could get you connected with different resources that I can't. They're focused on helping think through who you are, what skills you have to offer, and what kinds of jobs might be a good fit for you. I just wanted to mention that option.
Sure, I see where you're coming. I see where you're coming from. I'll keep it in mind.
You don't have to decide anything tonight. Take your time and figure out what you want to do. What else are you thinking about?
Well, I'm still worried about how we're going to pull through with the money stuff, but I guess I don't feel as hopeless as I did before. It's just one job, and even if I screwed it up, that doesn't mean I can't get it right next time. I don't want to just give up on everything here.
Losing a job is rough on anyone, but you're a capable person, and I believe you'll find another soon. I like your idea of updating your resume. What do you think about making that your first step?
Yeah, it's been a while since I last looked at it. If I can do it. I helped a bunch of the guys with their resumes back in college, so I know what I'm doing. I'm still not totally sure about going to a career counselor, but I'll keep it in mind. Maybe I'll see how I do job hunting on my own and then decide.
Fair enough. If you want, I can check out Stephen Ministries Community Resources Guide at church to see if we've got any career counselors listed. If we do, I can get you their contact information. That way you'll at least have it if you want it.
Sure, can't hurt. And hey, thanks for helping me think through that. At least I have the start of a plan now. Can't let this keep me down.
All right. Now we're going to talk about that scene as a group. First, what was the precipitating event that led to Evan's crisis?
Losing his job.
Losing his job. Okay. Now, how would you describe the crucible or state of crisis Evan finds himself in?
He can't do anything. He lost his job. He can't think about what he needs to do.
All right.
Part of that is he's just feeling sorry for himself.
All right.
Mm-hmm. And he's scared of him. Well, he himself said he was having a pity party. He said it himself.
Yeah. He feels hopeless. All right. What are the two paths Evans could choose?
Well, he could keep feeling sorry for himself Or he could get up off his rear end and try to do something better.
All right.
That's being assertive.
The way my manual says it, exactly what you said, but the path to greater brokenness is to get stuck in negative thoughts about himself and avoid taking steps to find a new job. Or the path to greater wholeness is to express and deal with his negative feelings so he can begin thinking positively about his future again and taking steps to find a job. I like the way you said it. What care did the Stephen minister offer that focused on process while helping Evan start on the path to greater wholeness? What did the Stephen minister offer?
I'm afraid of my mouth.
No.
No, you were right a moment ago. Go ahead. Yeah, you were right.
Well, he offered support for one thing.
Okay.
He gave him some ideas, let him think through it, and let him decide for himself.
Tells you to think about the first step. Yeah. So what can he do?
Yeah.
First.
I know we're short of time, but I want to go back to that conversation, and I'll tell you where, on the first page, down toward the bottom, where it's the second thing up that Evan does. He says, I haven't been able to even think about that, talking about doing something from here. Why would any company want me now? I wouldn't want me. And if someone did hire me, I'm sure I'd mess that up too. What's your first inclination to say next? I mean, what do you think that, I mean, mine would be, oh, no, it's not that bad, blah, 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 blah. And that's not what we do. I mean, we don't even make that kind of judgment. Read what the Stephen minister said. That's a lot of, I mean, she reflects the fact that's a lot of negative feelings, but not demeaning him by saying, oh, don't feel, blah, blah, that kind of thing. It's just recognizing and assertively recognizing that's a lot of negative feelings. And what we're going to do about that, not poo-pooing his where he is.
Get off your duff.
I mean, I just think, well, just keep this script and read it every once in a while, just because it is the right way that Stephen ministers are to respond and reflect the other person's feelings to keep them talking about where they're going and resolve the issue or come to a conclusion themselves. All right. What other kinds of care might the Stephen minister provide for Evan? All right, I'm going to tell you the correct answers. Evan has a lot of strong feelings about his situation. The Stephen minister could continue to listen and help him recognize, acknowledge, and express these feelings. Again, not oh, here's a solution to plug in, but just to maintain that process that they've already got going. Or the Stephen minister might offer to pray with Evan. We've talked about that. Evan's facing several challenges that seem daunting and may appreciate the chance to ask God for help. Again, you have to know that relationship and when and if that's appropriate. Evan may need help thinking through what to do once he's updated his resume. I mean, hopefully just doing that gives him some more positive feelings about himself. But then he may, we talked about that as the first step. After he does the first step, then he may need to be encouraged to, all right, let's get your resume out there and let some other folks see it. The Stephen minister may need to help Evan remain in the crucible long enough to follow through on his job search. Okay? But we don't just, and another thing that I thought was good in this was, let me check with our Stephen ministry resources to see if we have, even if I know a career counselor, but let me present that to you, not as me doing it, but as Stephen ministry. In the Stephen ministry files, we have this guy's name, and it's a ministry thing. It's not you trying to solve the issue. All right, now we're to the caregiver's compass. We're gonna make this.
All right, let's,
All right, talking about, especially the situation with Evan, identifying the problem and identifying the issues, and then how we work into those issues. Let's look at our caregiver's compass again on page something.
174.
Page one what?
What does it? 174.
174. All right, compassionate in the time of crisis. How can we be compassionate in a time of crisis?
We still have to listen.
There you go. Be still and listen. Be still and know I am God. You know, sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do, the best thing you can do is what we call the ministry of silence. And that's just be there. Just be there. Be with them. That they don't feel like they're sitting there alone without any friends to help them. Full of faith. Y'all are too quiet today. How does what we've been studying, not just 8, but 7 as well, how does all of this gel and work with us being full of faith?
Well, we need to pray for and know with him.
There you go. Prayer for them, exactly. Someone else?
Trust God.
Trust God?
And have faith and trust the process.
Yeah.
There you go.
What you say?
For me, trusting this process, because I want to solve the problem. I have the solutions and there's a great solution to the word. And so I want to apply them rather than work this process with care receiver finding the resolution to the issue.
We got to remember, our job is to help him get out of the crisis mode.
Right.
It's not about
Get them out of crisis mode, get them thinking straight again, get them thinking positively again. You know, going back to what I said a moment ago, a crisis is not necessarily a horrible thing. You've got a young mother who, you know, has been referred to Stephen's Ministries because she's having a hard time dealing with having a new baby. That's not a bad thing. But her life has been turned upside down. Especially the first baby. Her life was all about her and what she wanted to do. And all of a sudden, here's this little one that's relying on her to take care of him or her. Let me tell you, childbirth is a crisis. Marriage, as wonderful as it may be, is a crisis. All of a sudden, life isn't about just you. Now life is about you and someone else. All of this has to be put in God's hands and trust God to give you the words as a caregiver, to give you the words and the compassion and faith to be a good caregiver to them. Skilled. How does skill work in crisis mode? Somebody? Anybody?
Well, we might mention in our discussions that you've got skills
Yes, you've got skills.
and you need to work on uncovering it. Which ones of those skills are you most comfortable with?
The greatest skill you bring to a crisis, staying out of the mud, don't get in the mud hole with them, but the greatest skill you bring is an objective outsider looking at the crisis, helping them to work through and accept their feelings, and then helping guide them to a better way to look at whatever the crisis may be.
The biggest thing we have is the process.
Exactly. Losing a job may not always be a crisis. It may actually lead to something much better. But you've got to help them get over the pity party of losing the job to begin looking at, you know what, this may be a wonderful new future. You've got a chance to do something different. You've got a chance to work for a different company. Compassionate.
Do what?
We done that.
Trustworthy.
Oh, trustworthy. I'm sorry, trustworthy. I don't want you spreading my life to everybody you know. I don't want you telling everybody you know that as a new mother, I think that I'm a horrible new mother. I don't want you telling everybody you know that I feel that way. There are a lot of people who need Stephen's ministers, but there's two things that hold them back. Number one, pride. Pride gets in the way a lot of times. They're too proud to take any kind of help. Secondly, trusting you enough to tell you the most intimate details of their life and trusting you to help them work through it and not tell anyone else about it.
Amen.
No matter what module we are on, trustworthy is the most important because you cannot share your faith, your skills, or your compassion with them if they don't trust you to keep what they tell you a secret between the two of you. Now, if they want to go tell somebody they've lost their job and they're having a hard time, that's their right. It's their crisis. It's their life. They have the right to tell someone else their crisis. You do not have the right to tell anybody. The only place you get to discuss that crisis is in supervision meetings and then without the use of any name or specific situation. So if you find yourself in over your head, supervision is a place that when we meet that once monthly, that you can say, well, you know, my caregivers lost their job and they're having a huge pity party and I don't know how to get them out of the mud. And then as a group, we can help you possibly find a way to get them out of the mud hole without you getting in the mud hole with them. Looking ahead, in our next session, we will talk about confidentiality, like we haven't already talked about it a whole lot anyway, as a way to start thinking about confidentiality during the coming week. Here's your assignment. During the coming week, observe how well you and others keep private information private in various areas of life. Your reading assignment. Got your ink pens ready? Your reading assignment is the pre-class reading for Module 9, Confidentiality, in your Stephen Minister Training Manual, whatever page that is. What page is that, somebody?
175.
189.
175 to page 189. Come to class prepared to learn and share. In addition, begin reading when and how to use mental health resources. Your assignment for this week is the preface through chapter 3. You should have the book called When and How to Use Mental Health Resources. It's one of the books we gave you. Make sure everybody's got it. When and How to Use Mental Health Resources. Everybody got it? Here we go. So your pre-class assignment is the preface, how do you say that word? Preface, okay. Preface through chapter 3. I invite you to receive this blessing as we close our time together. May our courageous Lord, who experienced crisis as challenging as any we will ever face, be with us in the midst of our times of crisis. And may Jesus work through us as we care for others in crisis. Amen.
When is the next meeting?
Let me say this about that.